Mr. President, on the 23rd day of March, 2018, just a little over 2 weeks ago, Zell Miller of the state of Georgia, former member of this body, former governor of the state of Georgia, former United States senator in the state of Georgia, former chairman of the Democratic Party in the state of Georgia, an 86-year-old Georgian who had contributed immensely to his state, passed away in his beloved home of Young Harris, Georgia, in Bryan County, Towns County. I'm here to pay tribute to Zell and his life and his contributions to our country, both on a purposeful reason as far as a fellow member, but also a very personal reason for me, because he's an individual who I met through politics, became one of my best friends through politics, became somebody who probably had more of an influence personally on my life than anybody else I know in public service. But as I said, Zell died in Young Harris, Georgia, home of Young Harris College. So Zell Miller was, first of all, a teacher and a writer. He wrote over 10 books. He taught. He was educated at the University of Georgia, taught at Young Harris College, always taught throughout his career. Even as governor and lieutenant governor, he was an instructor and a teacher. He was professorial, but he was tough as nails. There was only one way to do it, and that was the Zell way, we used to say, and Zell knew how to get it done. He was 4 terms as lieutenant governor of Georgia, then ran for governor in 1990. I happened to be his opponent in 1990, and I'm going to get to that in just a minute. He won that election. It was pretty close. It's gotten a lot closer since then. Pretty soon, when I have grandchildren, I'm going to be telling them, oh, I won that thing. It was that close, but so far that's not the case. But he won it, and he was elected twice as governor of Georgia. As governor of Georgia, he embraced education as a major issue, and as I said, he was a teacher and was all about teaching. And he did something nobody's ever done, and some numbers that are very impressive. He created what was known as the Hope Scholarship, funded by Georgia Lottery. A lot of lotteries have been passed, and a lot of liquor referendums have been passed by basis of promising people the money was going to go to education, but they never really did. But in Georgia, the way it was done, and it came out of the debates that he and I had in that race for governor, when we finally passed the constitutional amendment to allow legal gambling in Georgia, and then passed the Hope Scholarship, which was where the money went, we tied all the money made on the lottery down separately for only 3 things: college scholarships for eligible Georgia students, 4-year-old voluntary pre-kindergarten for Georgia pre-Ks at the age of 4, and technology and innovation, wiring and infrastructure into our public schools. Now, this was in 1990, the election. He was elected in 1990 as governor of Georgia, served 2 terms, but by the end of the decade, the lottery had passed. Since its passage, 1.8 million Georgia children have gotten their college education. 1.8 million. 1.6 million Georgia 4-year-olds have gone to pre-kindergarten voluntarily. Georgia's public schools are wired. They're on the internet. We deliver content through distance learning. It's at the leading edge of technology in public education of any state in the country. Now, a lot of politicians can take credit for a lot of things, but I don't know of anybody who can take credit for 1.8 million college degrees, 1.4 million pre-kindergarten programs, wiring schools for the information technology of the 21st century, and doing it all based on a personal effort and commitment to see to it the more that we're educated, the better the state would be. I said Zell was an author. He was an author. He was a Marine. Served went in the Marine Corps from 1953 to 1956. Wrote a number of books about the Marine Corps, wrote a number of articles about the Marine Corps. He wrote one book called True Core Values. The values he learned in the Marine Corps, which he used throughout his life in education, as a governor, as a father, and as a family man. As a father, his wife was Shirley Miller. Shirley's a wonderful lady, and I got to be with her a little bit 2 weeks ago and during the services. Zell and Shirley are like Georgia's forever first family, not just because they were governor and first lady together, and lieutenant governor and first lady together, but also because Shirley was a partner with Zell. She just wasn't his wife. Shirley worked tirelessly for Zell, worked tirelessly for the state of Georgia, and to this day works tirelessly for our state. And during Zell's more difficult years, the last few years, having the difficulties that he had health-wise, she was right there to be with Zell every single day. Zell Miller came to the Congress of the United States in a very unique way. Paul Coverdell, who had the seat that I hold today, died. Paul was a Republican, was in his 2nd term as a Republican. Roy Barnes was governor of Georgia, a Democrat. And when Paul Coverdell died, Roy Barnes called Zell up, who was then the immediate past governor, and said, Zell, I need you to go to Washington and serve for me. The body's getting pretty close politically up there. We need to make sure a Democrat's in that place to replace Paul. Well, I wasn't involved in the conversation, actually, because I was hoping they were going to call me up, which I'll get to in a minute. But they did later, but they hadn't done it at that time. But they decided that Roy said, Paul, you've just got to do it for me, Governor Miller. You've got to make sure that Georgia stays Democratic. And Zell went on public television and said, I'm going to accept this appointment to the United States Senate to fill Paul's seat, but I'm going to vote like Paul Coverdell. He knew how important Paul's service had been to the state. He knew the conservative movement had taken the state and was moving in that direction. And Zell was a man of conscience and principle who recognized the importance of a United States Senate seat, but I recognized more the importance of the wishes of the voters. And he told Roy Barnes, he told me, he told everybody in the state, I'm going to take it, but I'm going to vote like Paul Coverdell. When that 4 years was up, the finishing that term of Paul Coverdell's, Zell Miller decided not to run again. In fact, he held a press, I was in the United States House at that time, and he had a press conference here in Washington to say, I will not seek re-election. That was in 2003. Well, I got on the phone, called my wife, and said, I'm going to go see Zell. If he's not going to run, I'm going to run for that seat. That'd be a good way to end my career and make a contribution to my state. So I called Zell and I said, Governor, can I come see you this weekend in Young Harris? He said, yeah, come on. So I got in my pickup truck, which is a good way to drive in North Georgia if you've ever been there. Pickup truck is a standard operating vehicle. Drove on kind of a snowflake morning in North Georgia to the North Georgia mountains in Young Harris and sat down with Zell at the fireplace with Woodrow and Gus, his two dogs, talking about politics. And finally I got around to the subject saying, well, Zell, the reason I'm here is you announced you're not going to run for re-election. I want to know if you have any issue with me running to replace you. He said, put your shoes on, son. You can win that seat, and let me know what I can do to help you. I've never forgotten the encouragement, never forgotten what he said, never forgotten the challenge I felt I had to take the guy that had beaten me for governor in 1990, to make a statement like that when I was going to seek to replace him in the United States Senate 24 years later. It was quite a difference and made a lot of difference to me in my life. Zell is just a unique individual about which there's never been one like him. He was a Democrat the day he was born, and he was a Democrat the day he died. A lot of people remember he wrote a book, A National Party No More, which made a lot of Democrats mad. He spoke at the Democratic National Convention and made a lot of Republicans mad. And then he spoke at the Republican National Convention to be the only elected in history person to speak the keynote address at both national conventions, Republican and Democrat, not in the same year, but in the same decade. But Zell said what he thought, and thought what he said was right, and he delivered on everything he ever said, and if he ever was wrong, he apologized. In his waning years, or in his latter years, he appointed many of his former opponents to offices of importance in our state. And for me, this is the first time I can publicly say thank you to Zell Miller, who I hope is looking down. I know he's looking down. I hope he's listening to what I'm about to say. But when he beat me in 1990 and I ran to replace Sam Nunn when Sam stepped down in 1996 and lost that seat as well, I thought I was through with public service. Had made my best effort, has done as well as I could, served in the legislature, but couldn't make it to that higher place. Well, in 1996, after I'd run for Sam Nunn's seat, about 2 months after the race was over, Zell called me up in August of 1996 and said, Johnny, I've got a problem. I've got a Republican state school superintendent and a Democratic legislature, and they're fighting like hell. And I can't solve the problem, but if I name you as a school board chairman, then you can come over here and they'll balance this out and get the politics out of it and help solve the problem. I said, well, Governor, I appreciate that, but I know what happens on a school board. You got 11 members of the board, and I'm one chairman. There are 10 other people that vote. You can't change 10 people's mind unless you know who those 10 people are. He said, you tell me who else to appoint. I'll fire the others and appoint the new people. He said, come over to the mansion. So I went over to the mansion, and we sat there with his operator at the telephone desk, and for 2 hours called the people that I knew I could trust and believed in that helped me with public education, to ask them to serve with me on the State Board of Education, take it over and clean up the mess that had taken place, which Zell acknowledged thoroughly. I accepted, he made the appointment, and over 2 years we had a remarkable time period, in large measure because I thought my career politically was over, so I didn't think about what I was doing as much politically as I thought practically for kids. Zell wanted very much to see public education at the apex of in his career. And so he wanted to make sure in that second term it was. I accepted, he worked hard, we joined together, and to this day, had a great period of time for public education in our state in terms of improvement, cashing in on the Hope Scholarship, and doing all the things that we did later on. I could go on and on and on, except to say this. I've worked with a lot of people, I've known a lot of people, I've never known a better one than Zell Miller. Never known anybody more true to their word, more solid to be counted on, who accepted their oath of office and every responsibility that went with it, who would say they're sorry when they needed to say they were sorry, who'd fight like hell when they needed to fight like hell, and who would never take no for an answer if they wanted you to do the right thing for the state of Georgia. So for me, on this night in Washington, D.C., having gone to the funeral of my dear friend Zell Miller, having shared with his family and many others that loved him as I have over the years during those 2 days in Atlanta, let me just close by saying one of Georgia's greatest citizens and probably our greatest governor, Georgia's first family in perpetuity, Zell and Shirley Miller, will be missed greatly by our state, will be missed greatly by me. But I thank God I had the opportunity to know Zell Brian Miller and learn from him in the best way you can, that's by working for him. God bless you, Zell. Thank you for what you did. And on behalf of the people of Georgia, God bless you and the United States of America.